What's up, everyone? So I've been MIA for a couple weeks, and there's a reason for that. I had my child. This video is just going to be my labor and delivery story. I wish I could have taped it. Unfortunately, it happened so quickly that was the last thing on my mind was, oh, I gotta tape it for YouTube. No, that wasn't a thing. So I just figured I'd do like a little sit down chat with you guys. And yeah, Oliver was born on July 5th at 3:27 p.m. and y'all, I got a C-section. I never would have thought I would have gotten a C-section. Monday the 3rd of July, I had already scheduled my non-stress test because I was actually overdue at that point. If you see me over here, it's because my child's right here. He's being a little fussy today. So I had my non-stress test scheduled, and when I went in, it was scheduled at like 10 a.m. and I got there around 9:30. They took me back right away and they started the test, but they couldn't find him. Well, they could find him, but he wouldn't stop wiggling around. He was just everywhere. They did the test, and they had to keep, the baby has to stay on the monitor for 20 minutes throughout. And he was moving around so much, so that took forever. While they were trying to find him and keep him on the monitor, they were doing my blood pressure and things like that because they had to take it anyway. And I had just been seen by my OBGYN that Friday. If you see me rocking, it's because I'm like holding rocking him. He's being like super fussy lately, so I'm just trying to keep him calm so he maybe takes a nap so I can eat lunch. I was there way longer than I thought I was going to be. And what happened was they took my blood pressure, and my blood pressure was high. Normally my blood pressure is perfect 120/80, and it was about 150/90, which is really high for me because, like I said, I usually have perfect blood pressure, and that was like, that's not my blood pressure. And I just had Starbucks, so I'm thinking maybe it's the Starbucks. Waited a while and checked it again because he was being stubborn anyway. So I wasn't in and out like I thought I would be. So they checked it again, and it was still high. Or it would go higher, or it would drop just a little bit, but not enough. I was there for a couple of hours, and they were like, we're going to call the doctor on call. Because my OB was actually on vacation at the time, go figure. So they were like, we're going to call the doctor on call, and we're going to let her know what's like going on. They checked my previous records for my whole pregnancy because it's all linked up in the same system. And they could see that my blood pressure had been perfect, so that something was definitely up. And preeclampsia is very common towards the end of pregnancies, and it usually comes on quick. I was never diagnosed with preeclampsia at all. They just wanted to prevent it. So I was basically, I guess you'd say, borderline or preeclamptic or whatever. Yeah. They wanted me to, the doctor had told me, we're going to check it one more time. If nothing's changed, we're going to take some blood work and a urine sample to test the proteins in your urine, and we'll admit you. Yes. Please don't cry. You are just having a day. Long story short, they checked my blood pressure again. It was still the same. It was high. They took a urine sample, and they took blood work, and they put an IV in me, or a central line, I guess, a line to hook up my IV to. And they admitted me. And it's funny because right before my husband and I walked out the door, he said, do you want to put the bags in the car in case, what if they keep you? I'm like, they're not going to, it's just a test, and then we're leaving. Like, I feel fine. I don't think they're going to keep me, and lo and behold, they kept me. They wanted to admit me and keep me in there because they didn't want me to become preeclamptic. They didn't want me to get the other signs of preeclampsia, because I had so many days, and I wasn't going to be back till Thursday night if they did let me go home. So that's a long time for something to go wrong, and they just wanted to prevent it altogether, which I was totally fine with, so I'm happy they did it. Once I got myself in a room and all that good stuff, he actually left and came back here because they weren't doing anything for me except giving me a cervical, a pill to dilate my cervix, and they did it vaginally, and that wouldn't be like, in 20 minutes, boom, or we're going to have a baby. So he was like, you care if I leave? And I said, no, like, go go get our stuff and then just come back and whatever, we'll have it. And I was calling my girlfriend, letting her know, because we had a backup person to come watch the dogs. So until my mother was like getting there. But we knew sometime that week we were going to have a baby. So it was kind of exciting at the same time, but it was nerve-wracking because it was totally not what, we were thrown off a little bit. Originally I had an induction date set for Thursday, that Thursday, the 7th or the 6th, to have him by the 7th. Didn't work out that way. So they gave me the dilation medication, and that literally happened every so many hours throughout that night, Monday into Tuesday morning. And then Tuesday morning, my mom and my cousin were on their way to the hospital. They had left to come to Indiana from Maryland. Towards the afternoon, or like late afternoon on Tuesday, my blood pressure actually skyrocketed to like 180/109, which is extremely high. And they gave me blood pressure meds for that. I'm still like getting cervical checks throughout these times, and it is so painful. They hurt so bad. Coming to find out, my cervix was being difficult, basically. It was really high, so they had to go in my vagina and up by my pelvic bone, or my pubic bone. So it was insane, and that hurt so bad. I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to give birth if I can barely get my cervix checked? That was my biggest concern. And I dreaded the cervical check. So they'd give me the medication vaginally, and then they'd come back in like 4 hours to check. So that 4th hour, I was literally dreading every time. They did let me eat while I was getting the cervical medication, because it doesn't happen fast enough. But as soon as, if I was getting closer to being into active labor, they were going to stop me from eating. So I was taking it in. I was ordering food from the cafeteria, which was actually really good, and breakfast and whatever. So I was happy about that. The food made me actually feel a lot better. Throughout the whole time, though, that I was in the hospital, I didn't feel contractions until they gave me the Pitocin. No, lies. Until they broke my water on Wednesday, but I'll get into that. So Tuesday night, they gave me, they started the Pitocin, and they were hoping that would help me dilate a little quicker. By the time I started that, I was probably 2 centimeters dilated. They gave me the Pitocin, and that they increased every 2, I don't know, they increased it by 2 from the thing. It was the IV, and they increased it by 2 every so many hours. And they would just monitor my contractions and make sure they weren't happening too quickly, and if they were too far apart, then they up it. So they were monitoring everything for me, and I still hadn't felt anything, like no contractions. I felt some back pain, but I think most of that was just from being in the bed, because my blood pressure was higher, and they were worried about preeclampsia for me, and they didn't want my blood pressure to skyrocket. They didn't let me walk around the hospital like I wish I could, and they didn't let me use any of the exercise balls. The only ones they let me use were the peanut ball, and I had to be laying in my bed to use it. So, and I just kept it in between my legs in hopes that he would drop, but he didn't. The only other time I was able to get up is to go to the bathroom. So whenever I would get up to go to the bathroom, I would just kind of stand in the bathroom a little longer, or stand by my bed a little longer, or take my time walking to the bathroom, from the bed to the bathroom, and vice versa. I would just take my time doing it. Some nurses did let me just like sway back and forth a little bit, just to get some, movement, I guess, because it actually felt good. And yeah, but they had me hooked up to all kinds of stuff. I had a blood pressure cuff, I had my monitor for him, and my monitor for the contractions going. Then I had these things, I had compression socks on because I was so swollen. And they also put those, there's other compression socks that they use, but that's hooked up to a machine, and it basically pumps air into these like things that wrapped around your calves, and it's to increase the blood flow, just like if you were moving your legs. So there was a lot to be hooked up to and hooked off when I got up to go to the bathroom. It got really annoying really quickly, but thank God for my husband was there, because he was up all the time, except for through the night I let him sleep, but during the day he was the one unhooking me and hooking me back up and whatever. Once I got the Pitocin, I actually was able to sleep a little bit on Tuesday night, so that was nice. Wednesday, the 5th of July, that morning, the doctor came in. My blood pressure was better. it had gotten better throughout the night, but it still wasn't good enough where they'd be comfortable to, like, you know, let me move around a little bit. So they, it wasn't great, but it was okay. Doctor came in, checked my cervix, and when she checked it, I was 4 centimeters dilated, so I was technically in active labor. So she went ahead and broke my water, and all she did was she took this, like, hook thing. It looked like, I don't know, it was about as long as a wooden spoon, not as thick, but as long. It was very thin, but it was as long as a wooden spoon, and at the end of it had, like, a hook like this, and she went in, and it hurt when it went in a little bit. It didn't hurt. It was really uncomfortable. My nose is, like, really shiny, and I think it's just my highlighter. I don't know. Went in with the hook, and I just felt it twist and pull, and it actually felt like a little baby rubber band just went beak and just clipped. And then it just felt like I just wouldn't stop peeing myself. It was weird. It was like it was like a relief kind of feeling. I had so much fluid in me, guys. I'm not even kidding you when I said they weighed me. They weighed me right after they broke my water and got some pads down. I lost like 10 pounds just in that, like, few seconds or minute that my water had broken. It was insane. I had so much fluid, and they're like, well, no wonder your son kept flipping around in there, because there's so much fluid for him to still be moving, even though he was big, like, ready the full term. So I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. And that's when they started thinking, okay, well, you should be, you know, you're going to be feeling more contractions, a little bit more intense. I hadn't been feeling them, barely. Like, if it was like, and that was it. But it didn't even, I don't even know. I was not feeling them like I thought I would be. About an hour passed, and I started to feel more pressuring, feeling a little bit uncomfortable more, and tossing and turning more. And that's when I decided to go ahead and get the epidural. And a couple of days before, I had been told, you know, they knew I didn't want an epidural. I wanted to go as natural as I possibly could, but I was already being induced. So there went that. Realized quickly that just because you have something in your head about, just because you think it's going to go a certain way, it can completely flip in a second. And that's exactly what happened. My whole entire birth plan was thrown out the window. Nothing I had wanted to happen except a healthy baby and skin to skin an hour after. But that's just because they practice that in the hospital regardless. I mean, you can type up a birth plan, have it in your head how you'd like it to go, but just know that it might not go that way at all. I didn't expect to have everything perfect the way I wanted it to go from start to finish. I knew things could happen, and that whatever would happen was happening for a reason, so I was just going to go with whatever. So they came in, and the doctor said, you know, we're going to check again, and if by the time we check again, if you're not dilating or getting any further, or your cervix isn't dropping, we're going to put you in for a C-section, because 3 days of labor is kind of a bit much. And my body was actually getting really tired really quick. They had told me 2 days prior that they'd recommend that I get an epidural, and that I don't have to, but they recommend it. And it wasn't even just because it makes them deal with me less. That's not why. The reason why was because of my blood pressure. And they had explained to me that, you know, pain makes your blood pressure go up. So if I'm going to be pushing out a baby, the pain's going to be there. And my blood pressure's already high. So they didn't want it to completely go and skyrocket. That's what they want to avoid. I took that into consideration, and then I took into consideration that, yes, my contractions are getting a bit more intense, and my lower back was really hurting. I was having a lot of back pain. I have arthritis already in my back, so it doesn't help the situation. My ass hurt so bad from not being able to get up out of bed. I was sick and tired of just sitting there and feeling all this, like, weight of the baby pressing my back. My lower back, like, was on fire at times, and then I was getting bigger contractions that were more frequent, whatever. I decided to go ahead and get the epidural. I said, get that guy in here. We'll go ahead and do this now. I waited about an hour and a half, 2 hours before I decided to get one. And I got one around like 11, I want to say. And they broke my water at, like, I don't know, 9, maybe a little earlier than that. So I waited a good amount of time in between just to feel it out. But I didn't want to wait any longer and then be screwed. That's what I wanted to avoid, being that oh shit moment. So the guy came in and gave me my epidural, and the epidural wasn't as crazy. The guy did an amazing job. Like, everybody in the hospital, I can say across the board, did a perfect, like, they were amazing. And they were very reassuring, and they explained everything to me. I knew what was happening before it happened, whatever. So the guy came in, did the epidural, and all I felt really was a pressuring feeling, and then it almost felt like a shock go down my leg when he was about to put it in, and that's how he knew it was like in right. And it kicked in about 15-20 minutes, I'd say. Well, it started to kick into that, and I started to feel numb on my legs and my abdomen, and boy, let me tell you, once it really kicked in, I felt great. I took naps, guys. I went to sleep, caught up on, well, I wasn't catching up on sleep. I was still pretty freaking tired, like, the whole rest of the day, because I had really gotten much sleep the past 2 days, and it was like, now that my body could relax, my blood pressure was starting to lower more, and they put a catheter in after the epidural, and it felt so good. Like, oh my gosh, it was amazing. So I don't regret the epidural at all. I do recommend it if it's something, maybe your blood pressure's high like mine was, or maybe C-section is a possibility for you, and you just, you know, having that epidural, when they came in and told me you're not changing. It also helped the cervical checks that they were doing, because they were so painful. I didn't feel a thing when they were doing them. It was just a little bit of pressure, like a little bit of pressure, compared to me shaking when I didn't have anything. That was the worst part. Not even the contractions. It was when they were checking me, because my cervix was such in a weird spot. Don't let people tell you one way or the other. Just go with whatever you need to do in the moment. You know, have it in your head. Maybe you want to try it this way, but don't expect it to go that way. Again, like, I didn't expect to be getting a C-section, and here I was about to be rolled back into a C-section. And they came in and told me that I didn't have any progress in my dilation. My cervix hasn't dropped any. By noon, I think it was around the time they did come in to tell me that, the doctor just said, we're going to go ahead and schedule you for a C-section. So I went and had Jordan call my mom, and she was at my house watching my dogs. I just told her to be on standby, and we'll call you when it's time, or when it's almost time, or whatever we hear. And she started making her way. It takes about 45 minutes to get to the hospital, about 50 minutes, I don't know, no more than an hour, if that. And so she started on her way, because she knew I was going to get a C-section, and I was hoping she would get there before I went back, and she did. And they were going to take me around 1 something, but they actually had a couple of people scheduled, so they took me closer to 3. Everything happened really quick. The anesthesiologist did come in and talk to me, went over some things. He was amazing. He was just letting me know what his job was during it, and that him and I would be the one interacting more than me and anybody else. And they also told me a lot of my nurses that I had seen previously would be in the room with me, which was cool, and that everybody would kind of be in their zone and doing their own thing, and it's very fast-paced. They also told me they wanted to do a C-section because Oliver's heart rate would drop very randomly, and they think it was because of the Pitocin. And because I had the epidural, I wasn't moving side to side as much, and it wasn't anything like an emergency C-section. It was very relaxed as far as them scheduling it. It wasn't anything that needed to happen now, but they didn't, again, want it to get to a point where they'd have to rush me back. They gave me a couple of medications for acid reflux, because they didn't want me to have anything happen while I was in surgery. And this was my first surgery, so I was a little nervous, because like any surgery, and this is a major surgery, it's considered a big surgery. Like any surgery, things can go wrong. So I was a little nervous about that, but the doctors and nurses had constantly reassured me that everything was perfect. The doctor I had been doing it, I don't know, she's partners with my doctor that wasn't available for like 26 years or something, and had been doing this for like 35 years. And I trusted her wholeheartedly. Like, my life is in your hands, my baby's in your hands, do what you gotta do, and just make sure I come out good. So they rolled me back, and then they took Jordan to get his gown on, and cap and gown, and all that stuff. And they were like, you're gonna have a baby in like within the next like 10 minutes, as they were pushing me back. And once we got to the room, I asked, they were just talking to me. The anesthesiologist gave me my meds before we went back. And it all happened so fast. The staff was really cool in there. They kind of doing their own thing. I let them prep me and whatever, and they put the little curtain up. But I noticed that during the procedure, I was like flat on my back. My hands are spread out wide. Jordan's sitting on this side of me, the anesthesiologist on this side of me, and I could see in between the two big surgical lights, there's like a little plastic piece in the ceiling, and I could actually watch the whole surgery if I wanted to. And I'm not going to lie, I would say half the surgery, or a little over half the surgery, I did actually watch because I had nothing else to do. I didn't really feel like talking to my husband, as weird as that sounded. I was just like, this is happening. Like, he just kind of sat next to me, and he rubbed my head, and he rubbed my arm, and he was just like, you're good. Like, you're doing awesome. There was nothing to say. I think we were just both in shock that, like, this is happening so fast. Within, like, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, Oliver was out, and he was born, and he was screaming and crying. His lungs were healthy. They weighed him. Jordan was the first one to hold him, which I think he felt a little weird about, but that was okay. He brought him over to me and all that good stuff, but it happened so fast. I will say, though, that I did get sick at one part before they could even get him out. They still have to cut your abdomen, and then they cut your uterus. And they still have to work the uterus as a contraction to pop him out of the uterus. So they were trying to do that, but his head was so big that they actually had to vacuum him out. And the pressure from the vacuum and them rubbing my uterus to get him out made me feel very nauseous. It was almost like you were seasick. It was weird. It was like I couldn't feel my body moving, but I could feel my insides moving. So it was so strange to me the way it was like feeling. And even the anesthesiologist, when I looked at him, he said that some people feel sick during this part, and I was like, I'm one of those people. I actually feel very nauseous. So he gave me like a little pukey bag, and all I got sick was obviously the meds that I had taken, and that was it. So that was the only time I got sick. I did feel nauseous after they pulled him out, and I think it's when they were getting the placenta out. But other than that, it was fine. I was out into recovery, and then they brought my baby to me, and my husband came in with him, my husband came in. Then they brought Oliver back from the nursery because his blood sugar was low. And they think it's because of how long I wasn't able to eat prior to my surgery. So it was like that night when they started the Pitocin, they cut off my food. They said a liquid diet. So I can only eat Jell-O, chicken broth, water, or like a sugar drink like ginger ale or whatever. And even before the procedure, they cut me off from water, which sucked. I ended up, a lot of it was cotton mouth from all the meds and the anesthesia and whatever. And the anesthesiologist wet a washcloth for me while I was in the procedure and let me like suck on it. It was weird. I was like sucking the water just to like get my lips wet and my gums wet because I was so dry. It actually made me feel sick too. If you go into C-section and they do cut you off from water, ask if they can just damp a washcloth and you just kind of bite down on it to get your tongue wet and your gums wet and your lip. It helps so much, guys. Like, that saved me. And watching the procedure, people are like, that's creepy. Why would you watch that? And I'm just like, well, it was kind of like watching a medical show. And I watch this all the time. So I didn't really care. But he was born, again, at 3:27 p.m. on July 5th. And he is perfect. And it was amazing. It was the weird experience. And I wish I could have had a vaginal birth. And I wish I could have done it the way I planned it. But God had a different plan for me. And actually, there was a reason why his head wouldn't come down. My cervix wasn't dropping and his head wasn't able to descend properly. The doctor that did my surgery checked something for me because she was curious as well as to why. Like, I have wide hips naturally. I should have been able to deliver naturally, but my tailbone is curved a specific way that is preventing his head from dropping. So that is a reason why, and from my next baby is most likely going to be another C-section because I don't want to be in labor for 3 days. I'm very thankful and grateful for those doctors there and nurses and the whole staff, anesthesiologists, the guy who did my epidural, whatever they're called. They do like the vein thing. I'm just so thankful for all of them. They were amazing. The hospital was perfect. I would totally, if I was still living in Indiana by the time we had our next baby, I'd totally go there again, like 100%. The whole drive thing doesn't bother me, but they were perfect. My labor was as good as it was going to get, and I'm very grateful for it. That was my labor and delivery story, and Oliver's very well. He was perfect. Even after birth, his sugar went back up and all that good stuff. Right now that I'm filming this, he's a month old, but I'm going to put some pictures and some little tidbits in here from when he was born. But thanks guys so much for watching, and enjoy the pictures of our new baby boy.